Hi guys, in today's video we're going to be painting a Trajan Valoris Custodes miniature from start to finish. But first of all I want to say a huge thank you to my YouTube channel sponsors Goblin Gaming who sent me the miniature out. If you check the description box down below you'll find a direct link to their web store, and every time you purchase something from this link it greatly helps my YouTube channel. When painting this miniature I tried to follow the Games Workshop box art as best I could, just changing a few colours here and there to help with contrast, but overall it's a beautiful scheme from Games Workshop that I wanted to try and follow as best I could. Okay guys, as always this tutorial is going to be very long, so go get comfortable, grab yourselves a nice hot drink or maybe my favourite, an ice cold beer, and we'll get started with the tutorial. I start off by priming the head of the miniature using Alclad 2's Lacquer Primer White. Lacquer primers are very harmful if inhaled, so please make sure you're well ventilated. Also, on top of this, they're very harmful to lesser quality airbrushes that don't have PTFE solvent proof seals. So please make sure you have solvent proof seals in your airbrush if you are using Alclads. Now we're going to use Alclad Lacquer Primer Black, and the reason we're using black is that metallics generally go over black much better than white. I'm priming the miniature at about 20 psi and about 4 to 5 inches away from the model, and I'm just slowly building up that primer layer. Now we're going to use Vallejo Metal Colour Airbrush Colour Copper. These are absolutely fantastic airbrush metallics, and you'll find that even with specific airbrush metallics they generally struggle to be sprayed out of most airbrushes, but the Vallejo Metal Colour range are super thin with really finely grained pigments, so you'll find that they spray out of the airbrush really nice. Again, I'm spraying at about 20 psi and I'm just getting a nice smooth even coverage of the copper. Now we're going to spray Vallejo Metal Colour Gold. Now the trick here is to leave the copper underneath the miniature behind and spray down from an angle and get the gold on all the top surfaces of all the armour panels. The gold colour in the Vallejo metal range is quite cool in colour, but we're going to warm that up nicely and create some shade using Games Workshop's Seraphim Sepia wash. And here you can see what the miniature looks like after applying the Seraphim Sepia to the gold. Now we're going to dry brush Vallejo Game Air Silver all over the gold. It's very important to note that this is a very bright silver and you need to make sure you've removed almost all of the paint on some paper towel and very lightly brush over the miniature. We only want to catch the very extreme surface details of the miniature. And here's what the miniature looks like after we've finished all the dry brushing. Now we're going to base coat the cloak of Trajan Valoris using Games Workshop's Corn Red. I thin it down a little with water so it flows more smoothly on the miniature, and also it's going to leave no brush stroke marks behind, which can really ruin the look of a miniature. Now we're going to paint the inside of the cloak using Vallejo model colour black. You can use any black for this purpose. It could be Games Workshop, Army Painter and so on and so forth. It just so happens that I'm using Vallejo model colour black. And here's what the miniature looks like after base coating the cloak. Now we're going to wash the cloak using the Army Painter's purple tone. You can water this down a little as it's a very strong tone, and it will still give you a nice deep shade to the corn red cloak. Now we're going to use Games Workshop's Mephiston Red, and we're going to make sure that we avoid all of the recesses of the cape, and we're going to use the Mephiston Red to highlight the cape, avoiding all of those creases in the folds. Here you can see what the cape looks like after applying all of the Mephiston Red to the cloak. Games Workshop's Wild Rider Red is going to be used to do extreme highlights on the cape. Now it's important to note that I'm only aiming for the very sharpest points of the cloak here, so as you can see, all the extreme raised creases of the cloak are being hit with that Wild Rider Red. Now we're going to use Vallejo Game Air Electric Blue to start highlighting the blade of the axe. As you can see, I'm only aiming for the very extreme edge of the axe and that tiny little area where the lightning is going to emit from. I've been using an Army Painter regiment brush for the whole of this tutorial so far, but now I've swapped out for a Da Vinci 5/0 paintbrush. This is a very ultra fine detail paintbrush, and you need a really fine tip to get those lightning strikes as thin as possible on the blade. I've also watered down the electric blue colour really thinly. Make sure the brush isn't loaded up too much, or you'll get too much paint on the axe handle, which I'm actually demonstrating here. So I actually remove a lot of the paint and I go back in and create those lightning strikes. Vallejo Game Air Wolf Grey is going to be base coated on the gauntlets of Trajan Valoris, and it's also going to be base coated on the feather from the plume. The haft of Trajan Valoris weapon is going to be base coated in Vallejo metal colour gunmetal grey. The lion pelt on Trajan Valoris is going to be base coated using Games Workshop Zandri Dust. The base also gets painted with Zandri Dust also. Now we're going to paint contrast paint Gore Grunter Fur onto the gauntlets that we base coated in Vallejo Game Air Wolf Grey. The Army Painter's dark tone is going to be washed on all of the silver metallics that are on the miniature. So that's the haft of the weapon and the plume of feathers also. Games Workshop's Agrax Earthshade is going to be washed onto the base of the miniature and also the lion fur pelt on the back of Trajan Valorous. Vallejo Model Air skin tone is going to be airbrushed onto Trajan Valorous' head. Now we're going to wash Trajan Valorous' head with the Army Painter's flesh tone. I think this is much better than Games Workshop's flesh tone, and it really helps to bring out all those really nice intricate details of the miniature. And here you can see what the miniature looks like after the wash had dried. His hair and beard was painted in Vallejo Game Air Wolf Grey and washed with dark tone. Games Workshop's Ashabti bone is going to be dry brushed onto the base and the pelt of Trajan Valoris. And here you can see we have our finished Trajan Valoris. Such a beautiful miniature, I think, personally. In fact, I think the whole Custodes range from Games Workshops are really nice. Well, I hope you've really enjoyed this tutorial, and if you have, please hit the like button, or even better still, leave a comment and let me know what you think of the video. Lastly, I want to thank my YouTube channel sponsors once again for sending me the miniature for review, and also thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.